spiraling dust upon the cheap cool stone, or snow that glides white over the deepening, or the blush that lingers on the lips, fresh from the fount of the old piazza, down from the castle break on the flowing hill, or the taste of baci rossi, hidden deep beneath layers, time and geography, the honeyed touch of the tongue on skin, the softening, melting, the bite when it comes, exquisite, perfect, pitless plum at the core, moist and ripe, suspended just so. I'll read Sunyan. Sunyan, as I mentioned, is a place where there was a temple. My first command in the army was in Mesa Base, just inland from that. I was a co-commander of a Nike Hercules installation with a Greek painter. Sunyan. One feels the heat of the sun as it glances off the columns, their fluted edges like waves rushing across to the Cyclades. And Byron carving his name into history, standing where I once stood, plotting his course into time. As I catch the breeze rushing at me from both sides, imagining the ripple of the sails, now taut, now relaxed, the mariner making his last sad passage. Just beyond the marble steep, the sweeping waves beating a mutual retreat on the shore, stretches the wine-dark expanse, the islands glistening in the near distance, where Helen once stopped on her weary way homeward. The world then, as now, standing on the brink, so many centuries past, the cycle repeating. And now, alone at last with the murmurs of the waves below and the gulls passing high overhead, was it you I waited for there? My legs draped over the marble balustrade as though anticipating the gods' reincarnation. As inland over the rough rock-faced hills past the herds and herdsmen, the thorny burrs of the lowly shrubs, the olive trees, the rocks and ravines, one might catch a glimpse of the young man I once was, standing agape, facing seaward, knowing without knowing that something yet must lie ahead, something divine, timeless, vast, and just beyond recall. Knowing the closest I would ever come might be there facing the sea, arms outward, eyes open to the sun's blaze, there on the edge of all our tomorrows, feeling the rush of history and the years, loves and sorrows yet to come. Well, it's really kind of a wonderful feeling to be back in the gallery and reading poetry. As I said, I want to read a couple from poems that we chose, maybe to make a second volume from. I won't take a whole lot more time. This one's called Night Thoughts on Athos. Athos is a peninsula in the northern Aegean. It's been sacred to the Orthodox faith for many, many years, beginning around the year 900. The story is that the Virgin Mary and Luke were out sailing and were blown off course. And when they hit land on Athos, and when the Virgin Mary stepped on the sand, all the icons and idols crumbled, the pagan ones anyway. And since then, it's been, as I said, a sacred place. And ironically, there's been a prohibition against women going there. And not only the women, humans, the women animals, although that's very difficult to control. I've been a couple times. There is no road in there. There used not to be anyway. You had to go in by fishing boat, and you had to get permission from all sorts of authorities, church leaders, and so forth. But the monks that are in there praying and running their monasteries, there are hundreds of monasteries in there, are very interesting men, very intelligent. At any rate, this is called Night Thoughts on Athos. If you go there, you men go there, or you women go there disguised as men, you will be expected to follow their routine. So if you're not used to waking up at 4 o'clock in the morning to chant, you probably don't want to go. Okay, Night Thoughts on Athos. By lamplight, the holy men write psalms to strangers, sipping their wine in the shadows. The years relive themselves, holy recollections, dreams of things that never were. Chances passing in the night, lonely in tavernas, around the stove, arguing their ancient memories, filling their lanterns and asking after wives and dreams. But these times have fled elsewhere to die, and only the lonely men remain to mourn their passing, each on his own holy mountain of sorrow. Here the young come now, the voices of change, and the elders smile. What this means is like the rain that is not rain, but the water from ancient wells, the angels remaining motionless beside. Only whispers survive, memories of memories, icons shaped of icons gone, and the others left to chant the empty evening legacies. In the night, the old ones climbed their stairs, their dreams scudding across the sea as though in flight back to their source, their hollow echoes rising to greet us from the rocks below. That was sort of generated by an experience I had there. When you get there, you walk from monastery to monastery, and all the maps that you get are measured in hours of walking time. And I was told to follow a telegraph wire that you just put in, and it followed a trail. I was headed towards a monastery called Bato-Pedi, and I felt fairly sure that I was on the right track, but then the trail split into two, and the wires went straight. So I decided to take the one over the other, and I was walking along, and there a donkey came up with a monk on its back. And the monk looked at me, and in Greek, American accent in Greek, he said, "Are you lost?" I said, "No." He said, "Well, you're an American." I said, "Sure." He was from the Russian Orthodox Church outside Russia. When the revolution hit in Russia, the church split. And he had been petitioning his church to allow him to come back to America. He was from Pittsburgh or something like that. But he was the only one that knew the chants, and they couldn't find a replacement, so he was stuck in paradise, basically. Okay. Let me read a couple of new ones, and then I'll read one more from that selection that has something to do with the gallery. So, this one is called Songbird. My office at Maryville College, there's the loudest of songbirds outside my window most of the year. But I enjoy it. Outside my window, a songbird sings, discovering himself in sound. His voice careens through the trees to the open air and hills. Invisibly, he soars high in his ecstasy as rain sweeps down, surrounding the berries, the sweet fruit hanging still in the breeze that ripples, recalling perhaps some Aeolian ode, a joy that beetles above branches in the rain, droplets sliding down like the anxious hands of lovers that glide in stolen moments along the landscape of desire. My mirrored movement and image present in darkening silence, turning outward in the widening gyre, moving from branch to bough beyond, as spirits might, leaping from petal to petal, softly until the dawn, and the still now present time, as he remembers his voice and calls his distant mate to wake from her dream, his deep, full, plaintive call, echoing once and once again, and then no more. Okay, this one, whenever I taught creative writing and asked the students to read a poem, they would always preface their poem by, "This is a work in progress." So this is a work in progress. Okay. Near where our house is, there's a huge cornfield, and somehow that cornfield attenuates the sound that one hears at night. And there's a train that has a regular schedule, and so it's not annoying, but it's a distant train sound. So train sounds at a distance. Sometimes these sounds reach me at night, a feeling like watching vapor trails and hearing the jets pass softly in the silence afterwards, as all the trains of my past thunder by, flattening the penny offerings we would leave on the track to appease the gods. Or like snow closing the distance between us, like mist spreading its drink, exploding into 1,000 quintillions, a veil sliding from a remembered shoulder that bends to the flame of desire, or rain gentle through the trees and smoke billowing from the hearth, quietly spreading across the valley, the swirl of steam rising from the cafe on the quay, the smell of coffee as we watch the ships passing in the night, their keels cutting into the unknown, as the sound sweeps now across the field, the husks absorbing the shock of the engine, waves of sound sweeping out from its core until the whisper attenuates to softness, the faint whistle on the wind, and our dreams turn elsewhere, and the silence returns. There's a reference in there to something that I recall from my youth. I lived in northern Japan for a while when I was younger, and there was a train track that went through the airbase where we were living, and we would steal up there and put little pennies on the track so the train could flatten them as they went by. The last poem is a poem that I wrote with this gallery in mind, and there's some references here that talk about things we used to do with the gallery, and I think maybe you still do. We used to do a T-shirt show. You remember that?
Yes.
Do we still do that? Have we done it? There was one year when we strung ropes all over the place and hung T-shirts. It was amazing. There's another show referenced in here, a show entirely in plastic and cellophane. It had a fancy name. I think that there are two culprits in here that were responsible. What was it called?
Cello Fantasy.
Cello Fantasy. Okay. Gallery space. There are places one returns only in imagination, and rarely. Places where one feels the slight, soft press of one's hand along the walls, and voices that trail from classes long past. The primal portals of learning, harmonies like modern hieroglyphs. Behind some doors, the mechanical whir of shredders, return to that reference in a minute, tearing up files, the random click-clack of typists hidden in dark rooms, and on weekends, the young voices, a language you heard long ago. And you smile listening to the children. Just outside the gallery where you stand once again there,
hanging art and t-shirts, plastics perhaps. Where do these memories go? Perhaps they are always here where we left them, like a flower set on the sill of an old house, high in the mountains, where you return years later to find the flower still fresh, replaced by some unknown hand. Memories replenished, reworked by other imaginations, enjoyed among friends. This is hard. A shared presence of awe returned. Thank you. Thank you very much. Let me return to the poem. I did a terrible job reading that. I haven't read that in a while. Let's see. And some of you will guess this. Probably more of you will understand the language that I remember from my childhood being spoken here on the weekends. There's the Japanese school. We still do that. Yes. Wonderful. Yes. And the other is, one of the amazing things that happened to me when I was teaching here was that my entire file was shredded by the administration for some unknown reason. I don't think it was a critique on the teacher. It just happened. At any rate, so gallery space, we're back in it finally once again. Thanks a lot.
After the reading, we are going to have an opportunity to talk with our artists, our poets, and there are also some books. If you would like to purchase a book, I'm sure they would be happy to sign that for you. Our last reader for this evening is going to be introduced by the president of the Creative Writing Club, Mr. Noah Ashlock.
He will serve as judge for the Bartlett Review Press 2017 Chapbook Prize. Widely published, his most recent work is One Life from Lamar University Press. His work will also appear in the Great American Wise Ass Poetry Anthology in 2018. And we cannot forget that Garrison Keillor read Matt's poem, Nights Our House Comes to Life, during the Writer's Almanac segment. So please welcome Matt Rickley.
Well, it's great to be back here. I was here in 2013 when Ted was running the gallery, and I remember Yvonne read that night also, so it's really a joy to be here. Today's my grandson's 6th birthday, so I thought I should start with a poem that I wrote for him about the day he was born. This is called Deliverance for my grandson, Cannon. Far below the surface of earth, where darkness drowns whatever sinks into its still waters, the miners waited week after week while villagers gathered in vigil above them in the Kopiana Square. Here, they squinted through the heat at a screen streaming live, hoping for deliverance, but holding their breath. And then a capsule rose like a bucket above a well, bearing upward the first survivor. Vuvuzelas blared. Just so, on the same gloried morning, under the same copper sun, shining alike upon men born again in a mine shaft and a birthing room in Memphis, a boy emerged, as if from a tunnel drilled through 2,000 feet and eons of rock, gasping for air, blinded by light. And he too rose up, dusted from a rift of gold. My daughter-in-law objected and said she thought I should have written about her pain and suffering. next one's the title poem of the book, One Life. Where I live on the north side of Terre Haute, every couple of years we're vulnerable to powerful spring storms. And there's a park about a block and a half from my house, and it always seems every time to lose about a third of its trees. Once more, the aftermath. Last week, a line of winds leveled our town, clear-cutting trees as old as Vigo County's oldest home. Before, we had lost a dying bark-scarred oak. Our other trees still stand. Amid the whir and buzz of saws and chippers everywhere around us, Daphne and Apollo, purple ash and poplar, stir in the breeze, but stay unflappable. Their branches arch above me like a nave, and now a silence spreads about. The wind animates the higher limbs, lifts them enough to let a slant of light slip through their folded hands and land on each green leaf and me, the trees translucent as stained glass. I was lucky enough to have a couple of poems that are in this book somehow accepted for the Heartland Review. I've known Mick a pretty long time by now. He was my student when he was getting his master's degree at Indiana State. So I don't know how much merit this has in getting included in the journal. I'm grateful. This is a poem that came out of a hiking trip my wife and I took 3 summers ago on the southwest coast of England. And in the title, I mentioned one of the towns. It's called Instow. So this is Instow morning, hiking on the southwest coast path. After the polished elegance of Bath, the west coast woke me like a wildling dream, a fever rising like a blood-red sky above the sea, but hiding behind fog. Footpaths narrow as rain gutters, cliffs dropping through ferns that felt untethered from earth, long slogs in rain, crossing coombs up and down the slopes of mud-coated slippery stones, and worse, the misreading of maps and waiting in a gully's gorse and thorns for hours. Worn out, unworthy of what yet awaited us, we fell into our bed and slept like bones. But morning came again, and as we boarded the boat to Appledore, the sun transformed the River Taw, its trawlers, quays, and glittering water into a hemisphere of light. And this is another poem about my local environment. It was a few summers ago. It's one of those Augusts which were just dreadfully hot day in, day out. And then school started, and life seemed really humdrum. And then, worse, we had to go to an English department picnic. This is called Epiphany. The end of summer on the Wabash River. The day began like 100 others, hot as Oklahoma. The country roads, just ruts and rocks, felt like stream beds of dust, and the river looked as stagnant as a sewer. We went to the picnic as a point of duty. Potluck, chit-chat, we'd leave by 6. But as dusk fell, the breeze blew in. A neighbor untied his boat from pylons, and blue sky slipped down in the east, turning to maroon above the willows and sycamores. We climbed aboard and watched the bank flare up like campfire. Skirting a sandbar, we moved upstream. The rudder caught a current, curved slowly around a bend, when a heron swooped and rose, hurling its wings outward and whisking past the last landing and into a wild woods. With turkeys docked behind us, just the dark ahead, a blur of ghost-white Asian cartwheeled into the air, their arc a spotlight in the coming night, then dropped down underwater and into our dreams. read a couple poems about art objects. This first one is about a print that hangs in the hallways of where I work. We have a bunch of WPA prints that someone found in a closet 20 years ago. And they've been in there for like 25 years. So this is Jam Session after Fred Becker's print, 1937. In the woodcut, the black and white quintet moves with the music, their wrinkled coat sleeves, the creases crossing their foreheads in waves. Even their fingers sing, gyrating joy. I hear the notes of West End blues, a tune my grandfather played in London near Bloomsbury and Southampton Row in 1926. I see this scene outside the Cora Inn where black cabs park, flappers in their bow march 2 by 2, and pigeons circumvent the square, their feathers blending with ashen clouds, about to salt the night with snow, a harbinger of things to come. But in the bar, he's blind to markets and war, and the cold dawn walk back is hours away. He's cooking at the keyboard, the quicksilver sound surrounding him, soon to be quiet as a spot of time. And this next one is by an artist I know in Terre Haute. He's a retired printmaker, and a little over a year ago he did a session at the Swope Art Museum in Terre Haute, in which he showed slides, basically a retrospective of his whole career. And this one print I liked so much, I actually ended up buying it from him. Terre Haute's one of these towns that in recent years has become a mecca for crows in late November. And this is about a crow. He called it Le Grand Perche de Terre Haute. Leaving the ripened fields of wheat before the early snow, the cawing crows arrive in crowds, a painting by Van Gogh. At dusk across the Wabash River, a yellow light remains, while swirling birds as black as ink darken the sky like stains, then pack the leafless trees like pews, parishioners in a church. One higher than the rest has made the courthouse dome his perch. Okay, and this next one I'm going to read is a true story. It's ostensibly just about channel surfing, but you'll see what it's really about in a second. I wrote it for my brother Chris, who's a painter, as was my mother. She actually did the cover to this book. Wheel of Fortune. With Brian Williams signing off, I rushed to change from Wheel of Fortune, just escaping the jingle's blare and Sajak's blathering. I start to sequence up, then pause, some voice intones St. Louis Mo, my native turf. It's Antiques Roadshow. Typically I'd surf on by, but now I'm interested. The object in HD fills my screen. Though dim, it looks familiar. Some Dutch school interior. A girl's lamplit face, far left of center, brightens a gloom-filled room. The owner stands off stage, beyond the picture's frame. But here's what I now hear. You're lucky, very lucky. You've won the lottery. Abruptly, fate revolves. I see the painting that once hung in my grandmother's home. The one she'd saved for Chris, my artist brother, until fortune consigned her to dementia's white noise doom. We hear a woman weeping tears of joy, and as the camera veers to frame her face, a gaffer gifts her Kleenex, and when she drops her plucky hands, I comprehend. Owner of the old master oil, the lucky Madame de Beaux-Arts, is our cousin, mistress of what remains, who never knew Vermeer, but watches Vanna nearly every night. I'll read one more. Unlike Ted Higgs, who taught at West Point and was, I think, a distinguished lieutenant colonel, I never served in the military, but I did have an encounter with General William Westmoreland. So I just called this Revisiting Vietnam. While dining across the room from General William Westmoreland at a retirement community, although my hair's above the ears and though it's growing gray, unwittingly my knee-long shorts and naked legs betray a hairy rebel's attitude, or so the general thinks. My plate of buffet food in hand, I go to get our drinks, but then the hostess intervenes, a human barricade, demands I don a navy blazer, and says that I'm afraid you can't get up again or you will make the general mad. More than 30 years before, not yet an undergrad, I watched my elder boomers protest the war Westmoreland waged, fitting flowers into rifles and making guards enraged. And now, as if I had dodged the draft and fled to Montreal, I've pricked the old man's thinnest skin, not trying to at all. But as we leave and pass his table, though I say not a word, the body language of my legs flips the prig the bird.
Thank you all for coming out tonight. I really appreciate it, and I really appreciate the wonderful work that we've heard tonight. You will be able to see this reading again on YouTube as ECTC continues to plow forward in its programming and trying to create an internet radio TV station. So if you follow us on Facebook, the Heartland Review Facebook page, you can find out more about these kinds of events. Excuse me, I'm starting to lose my brain a little bit. In October 27th, the Bard's Corner is going to be on campus to read. And again, go on Facebook, like us, and there will be a link to see this performance again if you wish to. Once again, thank you all. You can hang out afterwards and have some more nosh and talk with the writers. Have a good night. Thank you. Thanks, guys.
A lot of town cover for some of these newspaper, don't you? You'll be back here for fun.
Hi, Grace.
Hi,
What'd you think?
it's pretty good.
Yeah? Only pretty good?
It's just like, there are some interesting points in some of the poetry.
Yeah, so you can learn by listening to poetry and reading poetry. Absolutely. Yeah. Thanks for coming out. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. I have to like drive myself to come here.
Yeah?
It was kind of a scary experience for me, but I'm still trying to learn.
Yeah. Well, we appreciate it and you get extra credit.
Thank you. Bye, Mr. Kennedy.
Thanks for coming out.
Well, I was already here studying.
Wow, okay. I'm sorry?
So that was the free
didn't want us to get it.
Yeah, I know, I was like, yes.
Excellent evening, man.
Sorry that you had to drop the size, Very sorry.
Are you just wondering?
I was gonna say, it could have been a good yeah, most definitely. Anyways, just keeps me updated.
So, future ECTC. With
Oh, yeah.
It's great that you all have carrots.
I think great.
Maybe it's an essay about maybe also
So it means she was writing primarily.
my brother,
You know, with obviously, I was just thinking about like Greek a lot, where they just went 3 days.
Because with such a
when I
rare.
landed in Germany,
It's like, wow, you know, and money is.
See, that would have excited me.
I love Avalanche.
Yeah. Yes, yes. Yeah, good to hear from you.
Take care. You're welcome. Where's some of these sparkly?
Yeah.
Dylan's one.
Thanks for coming down.
Where 40 years.
We were very
It's a little like something new about me, so I'm like, oh, I never just love that.
well,
That is fascinating stuff.
This was Macy. That
Really?
This was Halloween last year. Her Elsa from the road.
Okay.
We teach you up there?
I don't know.
Yeah.
She,
Well,
this is pretty loves when I dress her up.
Want to do anything else?
Yeah,
I
we
dress
have
her
a
Snow White, have a little apple bar. She just lays down and it goes.
It's a strange combination of where sometimes it's like,
I was like, I wish I had been that clever.
Well, yes, we are.
how many hours?
I have a
well,
picture of
getting
it.
back to,
Have it on me.
if you're interested,
I have one of those.
I know.
She's calico.
we actually have
I think I fresh new ones of her when I'm here.
Cats right now.
I've heard good honors.
Oh, yeah, I know.
And
I'm
the other one is,
glad, I'm glad I'm not too bad. Yes.
Oh, yeah, I do. This is a little haunted house thing we got at Target, and she likes to hide in there. Yeah, my family gives me a hard time. They're like, you're a crazy cat lady. I'm like, well, it's because of Mick. He turned me that way.
Yeah,
But they're fun. They bring joy.
yeah,
She had a discrete time. That was an issue.
yeah. She's, like, she twitched last week.
I will, thank you so much.
Oh, right. Right, but I'm sure it does the period.
Well, yeah, actually, she's the worst.
So while he's
It's just, I sure will.
You get them all ready to be honest, just look kind of smart. A couple weeks from now.
I was.
You're staying the night at our house, aren't you?
Like, no, just,
No, you can't. You have to just sit in the driveway and just sit there while we
Still
go.
like hang out in Walmart until they're ready, we'll let you know.
It's needs to be.
No problem.
You gotta watch out for those reporters, everybody's drowning. Yeah, this could actually be. Sir, it was a real pleasure to hear you read. It was really good.
So it is, I'm always like, I was just waiting for the hype.
That's a beautiful report. You actually wrote something that makes sense.
Yeah, I think that's probably a good tip. People around here.
Yeah, that was really.
I might have one. I've got to have kindergarten tomorrow, so I can't go crazy.
Where's the donkeys?
We're all quiet, just staring at you.
Hey, where'd you come from?
You may have heard our stomachs growling.
Yeah,
Well,
well.
Chris, you did a good job.
I was so nervous.
I totally understand.
Oh, no, you were way.
Just give them a
My background is helping me out there.
Texas Roadhouse. You know it's easy to do, check them out. Really? Yeah.
So we don't have.
You're really right.
I love Dylan. And
That must be a hard one to
sing.
We have a critic.
No.
I kind of like the
If we go there.
the challenge. I when we were in the band, we did see a little role as well.
Oh, yeah.
So
Well, they know
most people don't know the rules. But it is.
Yeah.
I'm a wider person than Shima, so I appreciate it.
I need to clean up here a little bit and then, we'll be
I got your
out.
purse.
I was
Is that where,
stunned.
Ladies and gentlemen.